Number 4, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Energy and Resources and asks, does he stand by all his statements?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Yes.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he stand by his statement that it is, quote, emotional claptrap, unquote, to stand up for the New Zealand fern bird, the threatened fern bird, to try to protect it from drilling rigs?
Speaker.
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Yes, because I think what the member was doing was presenting the worst conceivable scenarios as if they were fact. The member was totally ignoring the extensive consultation process, Department of Conservation, iwi local government. He was ignoring the extensive legal processes that we're really just at the start of here that involved, again, the Department of Conservation, access arrangements, RMA processes and the like that very much safeguard environmental factors. And fundamentally, he was also ignoring that the area he talks about has been mined for 100 years.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is he aware that the Victoria Forest Park, which he unknowingly opened to petroleum drilling, is home to the kaka and the rock wren, two birds ranked last week in the scientific journal Current Biology as being in the top 100 most evolutionary... Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's shouting is making it very difficult for us to hear over here.
Order. 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 It would certainly assist the order of the House if the member could ask a substantially shorter question and without injecting his own opinion as to whether the minister knowingly or unknowingly approved a particular site. I'll invite the member to reword his question. Dr. Russell Norman.
Supplementary. Is he aware that the Victoria Forest Park, which he unknowingly opened to petroleum drilling, is home to the kaka and the rock wren, two birds ranked last week in the scientific journal Current Biology as being in the top 100 most evolutionary distinct birds under threat from extinction?
No.
Speaker.
Honourable Simon Bridges.
I always knew there was Conservation Park here that I was deliberately opening up. And I also know that fundamentally the Green Party is anti-development. Now that's okay, that's a perspective, but it also means no taxes and royalties and no jobs, including the hundreds in this park in gold mining and other activities.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
In the extensive consultation which he described earlier, did he realise that the Victoria Forest Park is home to the kaka and the rock wren, which are two birds which were ranked last week in the scientific journal Current Biology as being in the top 100 most evolutionary distinct birds under threat of extinction in the world?
Honourable Simon
Speaker, in the
Bridges.
consultation process, in the end of it, I received extensive documentation. I studied it conscientiously, and it made very clear. That there are a number of areas of sensitivity that were excluded, and indeed others that I excluded as well. But I come back to it. This particular area of Conservation Park that the Labor members laugh about, but which includes hundreds of jobs that, frankly, Damien O'Connor should be standing up for. And I appreciate the member's position of no development. That's not the government's position.
Point of order.
Point of order, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I seek leave to table a journal which is not readily available, Global Distribution and Conservation of Evolutionary Distinctness in Birds from Current Biology, number 24, May 2014.
Well, on the basis that it's not, I'll take the member's word that it's not readily available to members. I'll put the leave and the House will decide. Leave is sought to table that particular journal. Is there any objection? There is objection.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, right honourable
to the
Prime
Minister. Can the Minister tell us how many previous mining permits were on the Victoria Forest Park, and does he have any idea how other parties in the Parliament, what view they took on that?
The first part of the question can be answered.
Well, Mr Speaker, there are 58 mining permits in that area. Some 12 at least were granted by the last Labor government when the Green Party did absolutely nothing.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Are New Zealanders wrong to love the unique and threatened rock wren with its rounded olive-brown wings and want to protect it from the bulldozers and gigantic drilling rigs that this minister is proposing to send in to wreck the habitat of this globally threatened bird?
Order. Point of order. Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, it was very hard to hear what Dr Norman was asking there. No, Mrs King, I was not laughing, although every time you speak, the House does come to a certain standstill.
The member, please get to his point of order, otherwise...
Well, I would if I wasn't interrupted.
Yes, this is a point of order. Order! This is a point of order, and it will be heard in silence.
I ask you to consider, Mr Speaker, if in fact the material that Dr Norman is putting into his question is reasonable under the standing orders. He is making all sorts of assertions, casting aspersions, etc., and then asking a question that is always couched in the catch-22 nature. Everyone knows that the Greens support this sort of thing when Labor's in government, but not when Nationalists.
And that last part is unnecessary. Order! If the member asking the question would please have a look at 1711, questions are meant to be succinct, not speeches or long statements, and if the member was prepared to adhere to that Speaker's ruling, he would greatly assist the order of this House. The member does many times make very long questions that do invite a lot of disorder and a lot of interjection, and the answer he then gets is probably one that is unhelpful to the member anyway. But I'm not going to rule that question out of order. I'm relatively generous with allowing fairly extensive questions to be asked, but extensive questions are very unlikely to deliver an answer satisfactory to the person asking them.
Well, point of order.
Can I just clarify in any way that the member's not disputing a ruling I've just made?
No, I'm not disputing, but it is related. Mr Speaker, I'd just like to point out to the House and under the standing order around disorderly conduct, what we see is twice these questions have been interrupted from interjections from this side, and twice you've chastised this side of the House for the questions, when in fact all the disorder is coming from this side of the House, sir.
I'd really appreciate if the member would listen to the point I've just made. When we get lengthy questions, almost speeches, that again inject a lot of opinion from a particular member, it does create disorder. So it would be helpful if we could get away from these lengthy questions full of a particular member's opinion. Are there further supplementaries?
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. How can the Minister justify his attempt to destroy the habitat of the kaka, which many New Zealanders, if not him, love and want to protect, when this is a treasure for all of New Zealand and he is letting it be destroyed?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
I repeat what I said last week, that the member is scaremongering because he's simply not taking account of the extensive consultations of the legal processes that protect our environment in this area and that will be ongoing. The fact that actually New Zealand is 1/3 conservation estate, 40% of that schedule form. We should be proud of that. But I repeat, where was the member when the Labor Party in this very area he talks about opened up open cast coal mining, and yet now he's all of a sudden upset?
Order. Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to answer the Minister's question.
Order. The member is now just trifling with the chair. Question number 5. No.
Supplementary.
Question number 5, Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order. Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask for a supplementary, as is my right. You may not like my questions, but that is nonetheless, they are questions within the standing orders of this House. It is my right to ask questions.
The member would resume his seat. I've already explained to the member I find his questions very difficult to chair because of the length of them. He's done nothing to rectify that. He then trifled with the chair with his point of order. I've moved to question number 5, Honourable Kate Wilkinson. Point of order, Grant Robertson.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister invited Dr. Norman to answer a question. I have heard many times in this House people do exactly what Dr. Norman did and seek leave to answer it. Clearly you didn't feel that was in order. The next step is then to ask if there are any more supplementary questions. Dr. Norman had one. I think it would help the order of the House if he were able to ask another supplementary.
I hope that members will listen to the rulings I've given today. Question number 5, Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr.
Point of order, Speaker.
Point of order, the right
Speaker, you will know that the House is the master of its own destiny, and if a member seeks leave in the way that Mr. Norman did, that leave should have been put to the House. We run this in the end, not just you.
No. The leave was sought to answer the question on behalf of the member. That's not appropriate leave. If the member sought leave to ask an additional supplementary question that he's asking, that is leave that I would have to put.
Well, point of order.
Point of order. Order.
Mr. Speaker, the Greens have more allocated questions, as is right by a proportionality in this House. So I think that the member, Dr. Russel Norman, should be able to ask a supplementary if he wishes.
The member is now questioning a decision I've made. I've moved to question number 5. The Greens... Order! If the Greens wish to use their supplementaries, they have another opportunity later in the day. Question number 5.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I want to be fair. Order. I just want to be fair to all members. I have made a decision. Order. I have made a decision that we are moving to question number 5. If any member is now relitigating that decision, I will be inclined to ask that member to be leaving the chamber.
A point of order, Mr. Speaker, and it is a new point of order.
Honourable David Clarkin.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister in his answer was out of order, and I would ask why you did not call him to order, in that he is meant to answer questions, not ask questions. And I'm surprised that he wasn't stood down in the way that Mr. Norman was for breaching standing orders.
It's a reasonable point the member's making. I can assist the member. If you go back and look at the context of the question that was asked, how can the Minister justify destroying habitats, etc.? It was a question that some might say was emotive. It was certainly full of opinion. And on that basis, as I've said to this House on many occasions, it gives wide licence to the Minister when he answers the question. Question number 5, Honourable Kate Wilkinson. Chris Hipkin.
Not yet. Mr. Speaker, there was a ruling made by Speaker Hunt in the term of the last government that political parties would be able to determine how they allocated their supplementary questions. That was previously there were set numbers of supplementary questions per primary question, and the responsibility was then given to parties how they allocate them. You've now indicated that it's no longer up to a party to indicate how it allocates its supplementary questions, that you'll determine when you've had enough supplementaries on a particular primary question.
Order.
I wonder if you could give us some further clarity around that ruling.
The member is now in danger of leaving this chamber. He is relitigating a decision I've made. I was very unhappy with the point of order raised by Dr. Russel Norman. I have put up now with lengthy questions despite asking him to ask them consistent with standing orders and being completely ignored. We are moving to question number 5, Honourable Kate Wilkinson. I just want to be absolutely fair to the Honourable Trevor Mallard that if in any way this is a point of order that relitigates my decision to move to order. I'm talking. If it in any way
you're made to stand up.
Order. If it in any way order. If it in any way relitigates the decision I've made to move to question number 5, I will then be asking the member to leave the chamber. Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not relitigating the question. I'm making it absolutely clear I'm not asking you to reverse your position now, but to consider an alternative method going forward, and that is to allow members, if you believe their questions are out of order and inappropriate, to ask them and then to rule them out the way that previous speakers have.
I will consider that. Question number 5, the Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the